What do you think the purpose of the application is?
To learn more about the company, motor carrier,
For who to learn about it?
for the underwriter and the carrier.
So it needs to be what?
Correct, accurate.
Legible to start with.
Absolutely.
I've seen some who are not. Correct. Yeah, I think it needs to be detailed. It needs to match what the federal does. But I want to step back a minute. What it also has to do is to give the underwriter a warm, fuzzy feeling about the risk. Meaning that even though I know for a fact Byrne Wilcox asks for dumb questions, but if they ask for it, I got to answer it because she wants it. Don't argue with her. It's not necessary. If they want it, they got to do it. You want it complete. So when you send it in, think before you send it in, if I got it, would I be willing to work on it? I looked in the court app the other day. It's just not enough information, guys.
It gives you the name and the address.
It just doesn't. The one thing, you know, the one thing they're missing in the court app? The date of hire. And if I had to ask one question, it would be the date of hire. If that was the only question I could ask, it would be that. Because the more the percentage of the driver that's been there over a year, the better the risk is, period.
One of my companies told me the other day that 60% of their loss ratio was first and second year in business.
Yeah, she says 6% of loss ratios with first or second year. I have the statistics out of Northland at a period of time that 85% of their crashes were caused by drivers who've been with the motor carrier for less than a year. I'm not talking about experience here. So the significant numbers is the first year of being with that motor carrier. Strange equipment, strange locations. Now again, later I'm going to talk about some of this new equipment. GPSs and stuff can help that. You follow what I'm saying, that we haven't factored into it, but those statistics are there. And so the court app doesn't have that. You also have got to understand, if you're new in this business, Krista, is that some carriers will quote on anybody's app. I looked at one the other day, a case I was looking at, an expert witness case, and actually they were using a Maxim app, which is no longer a business, which couldn't even write it, but they sent it in, and we can quote on that. I mean, you know, as long as all the questions are answered on those things. But when you get through, you're going to have the individual app also signed by the company who wrote it. So a lot of times there's a two-app process. They'll quote it here, give an indication, bind it, but then they'll have to have the unique app for the carrier to follow up afterwards. So that's the process here. So to give the underwriter a warm, fuzzy feeling about their risk, excited about providing sound quotation that will be successful. That doesn't mean it has to be perfect. They just want to, and a part of that is if I get a good price, am I going to be able to write it? What's the hit ratio? How often is it out there? What's required? Tammy, you got to tell your insureds what's required.
Your firstborn child.
You got to let them know everything that's been needed. Some carriers require loss runs under 5, some don't. Some carriers require IFTAs under 5, some don't. Some carriers require them obviously over 20 financial statements. Some of them want compiled statements versus provided outside, the larger the risk. You know, the IFTA report, all this stuff. You got to let them know what's there. NVRs or not.
It's getting worse as it goes on.
Yeah, you're getting more and more data worse here because of what we have, and also what, you know, the type of equipment they have, and all that kind of stuff. She's got to know. Every wholesaler in this marketplace has got to explain that to the retail agents. And then, folks, discipline your retail agents. If they don't send it to you after the third time, after the first time, say, don't do it again. After the third time, either make them come here and listen to this course and learn why they have to do it, or don't do business with them anymore. Folks, you're going to get in trouble here as a producer if you don't have the retail agents who understand what they're doing. Same token, retail agent, you want to deal with underwriters who discipline their retail agents. Because your worst fear in this is an agent who doesn't do it right. That's your worst competition. Agents who know everything you do, who do it all right, is the ones you want to compete with, because that's a level playing field. Don't shotgun the risk. The worse the risk is, the less you're going to shotgun it. If it's a bad risk, the most you're going to send it to is 1 or 2 insurance companies, and when you send it to them, you go to the underwriter and buy them liquor, or at least buy them flowers. You don't shotgun and hope somebody makes a mistake. You got to know what their appetite is up front. I don't know how many of y'all can relate to this. But I already mentioned I had a couple ex-wives. So you know there was a history in my life where I was involved in with more than one other partner here. How many could you tell them all you loved them and they'll believe you? The most I could do was about 2. My point here, if I send the app in, I want them warm footed. I want them to work on it. How many can I tell them I love you and I want you to work on it? If you do it, you'll get it. And they both believe me. Now I can call her up and say, Tammy, you interested in this risk? That's different. You know, nobody's working on it. Here's the parameters. To send it in, you think you want to do it with it. I'm okay with that. Brad, I'm okay, Brian, I'm okay screening that part. But once we go through this whole process, I want you to have better than 50-50 chance, and you can't send it to 14 different people. I got a risk here that would look at it. He said, and you can relate to this, is that we sent it a risk with alerts and problems and all. He said, I sent it to 17 people and Canal rejected it 4 times at 4 different wholesalers. I mean, you know, you screw the market up. We know that. Everybody talks to everybody. So the worse the risk, the fewer people you send it to. You send to the ones who want to write it, who will take the time to do the job for you coming with arms, meaning armed with how they've improved, why it's not as bad as it looks, how things are getting better before the renewal time. You can't wait until 3 weeks before to get rid of your drivers. This risk I saw had a lot of bad drivers, and all of a sudden, you know, they didn't do any business until the premium doubled. Then guess how many drivers they got rid of in the next 3 months and how many units. You've got to start earlier than that process here. But this is a whole application process. It's to energize the underwriters to want to write it. So agents, you've got to give them everything they need on the form they need in detail, legible, and a lead time of, what, 45 to 60 days? Depends on the risk. A lot of underwriters write bad, will look at risk with some marginal hair on it, some loss ratios in this part of it, without, but it's got to be within their appetite, the part of it, and the price here. So the better communication and understanding by producers and insured, the quotation will reflect the operation and possibly not higher rates because of the unknown. Because most people throw a little hedge unknown. Consideration. Why do we have to sell? Folks, the only thing we sell is our time. I don't care if you're selling shoes, cars, is our time. So we want to be as efficient as possible. So the provider of insurance must balance the time it takes to obtain the information, underwrite the risk, sell the risk, and deliver the policy, including necessary verification of information. So the non-fleets, they have to fit in a box. There's fewer options there. You know, if it's outside the box, the retail agent typically, is it worth your time to go try to find someone who will write it, maybe at a higher price? Wholesalers, you're pushing paper. Tammy, you don't have much variance in that. It's in the box or not in the box, right? Your job is to verify that. And if there are things that they have improved, is to verify what they've improved. Insurance companies, you again want to keep it because you're restrained sometimes by reinsurance carriers who are what they're willing to reinsure, so certain parameters and some other things there. So it's the thing. How many of y'all use CAB? You all use CAB, right? And that's your, Robert, that's your litmus test in a lot of cases, right? Yeah. A lot of people have become addicted to that process. As you know, CAB are members of our foundation. They've done webinars for us. They do Carrier Software is a product like CAB that's more affordable for retail agents and small insurance companies. CAB is relatively costly. A lot of people are finding what they provide, particularly that's where we're going to get the risk profiles and things.
What was the one that you mentioned?
Carrier Software. It's the next one on the line here where I have CAB Carrier Software that we have here. It says the same thing, just a different format, a little less costly. Brad, if you could go to your insured, or if you could look at your insured, and if you could get a monthly report that shows any change in vehicles, any out of service violations, and their CSA scores, including alerts, on a monthly basis, would that make you a better insurance retail agent? Will you be able to help your insured better?
Yeah, that'd be great.
For $1 a month, $12 a year. That's what Carrier Software can do. To me, that's a no-brainer. If I'm going to write it, I want to stay ahead because I want to find out when they have that alert before Tammy does, which could be 6 months, because I want to start working on it now. If you don't know what the alerts are and all that, that's where the CSA comes in and says you got a problem, send the warning letters and things like that. And a lot of insurance carriers use that as a litmus test to write or write not, depending on how many alerts they got. But I want to know ahead of time. To me, to spend $1 a month to write the risk on a $10,000 risk with one unit even, and even I can go and tell the smaller truckers, we'll keep track for you. If there's something information wrong on it, then we'll help you straighten it out before it goes down. So when I come with Tammy, even though the alert's there, I've now got a program to tell her we've done it here before the last minute. This is the stuff that we're talking about that's available in the workforce now. Driver standard credit scoring, folks. This is proven. What does credit scoring prove? And that's Progressive's key underwriting. It proves maturity. I don't worry about paying my premium. I'm worried about being mature, taking care of the business. And they have found that people who take care of their business, take care of their credit score, deal with their personal lives, and have that in order. I asked an underwriter, a loss prevention person one time, compare this motor carrier who used to work for Snyder National. I'm just picking a big company out. 1,000,000 miles, accident free. Now they're owner-operator and work on their own. What makes them worse risk? And he said simply when they worked with Snyder National, they didn't have to worry about eating. Now they have to worry about eating. That changes the whole characteristics of that added anxiety, the add wording, the add pushing. Where working with Snyder, they took care of all that. Cash flow, receivable. So the credit scoring is a big element on the stability of the individual person. And a lot of carriers are doing credit scoring. It's not as many these are for smaller motor carriers, not the bigger risk. Obviously, that's a consideration. Length of time in business. As you know, if they haven't been in business over 2 years, it's very difficult to write them today. Those are the new ventures today. That history. And by the way, for you who hear this, let me explain what they're looking at if you're not familiar with it. It's not the time they've been in business, it's the time they've had their own insurance. Because they have been affiliated on an operator agreement for a number of years with another motor carrier. But what your insurance carriers are looking at is the insurance, licensed insurance, and how long they've had insurance in their own name. If they work for some other motor carrier, meaning owner-operators, even a fleet of owner-operators, you have to do more documentation to show that for the experience than having in their own insurance, their own name for insurance. Fleet, you got more dollars. It's still required to fit in the box, but typically the box has more flexibility. An attempt to look beyond the public information to what does the public information mean. Require more information, review and use of information. I mean, folks, if you're going to do fleets, and we'll do this in advanced underwriting, you got to do a loss analysis. You got to do a per vehicle crash cost, and you've got to tell why those differences are. The more information you do the triangles and put the information, the greater chance you're going to have ability to get it written. Support. Before binding, all that must be cleared up. This is loss control. Most motor carriers, insurance carriers I'm aware of, do loss control mandatory with more than 10 power units. There's some less than that they'll do it on insurance. Is that right, Brad? I'm Brian. It's about 10 power units or more. They're mandatory. Less than that can do it, or if it's a marginal risk, they'll come by, look at it, but it's accommodation. But they're going to do. Some of them do a phone interview less than 10, but 10. Again, over fleets, when you start getting fleets, there'll be loss prevention. To verify two things. To verify first the information that was sent in was correct, because they do that in the first 60 days. So if there's a problem, they get off of it. But they also do it for improvement. In advanced underwriting, we have loss prevention people to show how they help the insured. I know many insureds who don't change insurance companies because their loss prevention people are so good. They don't want somebody new in that area. So loss prevention can be a plus. It can also be a minus. I've had a couple experience, Christina, with Scott being some he didn't like. That was a minus, so it could be with his insurance, okay?
And this may be for a question more for the wholesalers and underwriters. Is there something that you could offer, that we could offer as retail agents to our clients to say, hey, look, there's someone that specializes that you can meet with, I don't know, every 6 months or so, to go talk to your drivers about loss prevention, et cetera? Is there some sort of program that they could use, or?
There are two things. A lot of times the insurance carriers should provide that service for you, and most of them dealing in fleet have that or have availability to a third party like Thorn Valley or somebody. There's some third parties out there. There's one out of Oklahoma, I forgot, that does, I know what those guys are. Yeah, they can, your insurance carriers can recommend that if they don't provide it themselves. Yeah, there's got a few independents out there that do that. Thorn Valley's members of the foundation, Tom does a good job, that's why I mentioned him. He's got his designation, but there are some competing companies like him. But he's
Thorn Valley?
Thorn Valley, yes, sir. It's got to be accurate. The past history providers, the hit ratio, meaning your past history. How often have you sent an app in and haven't written it? You got to go why you can write it, because you want a hit ratio. Type of risk, often the risk, the quote. I mentioned this to this before, and hopefully that you understand it, but maybe we'll come back here to Jarrett, who is not as familiar. Jarrett, you know what a tanker is? There's two types of tankers in the marketplace, food grade and gasoline. From an insurance standpoint, which is easier to write, gasoline or food grade? There's more people who prohibit food grade tankers than gasoline tankers. Why? Because the configuration of the trailer. A food grade tanker cannot be baffled, cannot be compartmentalized. So when you run down the highway, you have the whole 9,600 gallons with the inertia of moving the load, where gasoline are in 1,800 or 2,200 gallon compartments, which takes less. And I use this is a very technical term. You got to understand, the cargo sloshes around more. Okay, and there's there's more confinement there. So you got to know that. It's not intuitive, it's just the opposite of that. This is why you have on your prohibited list, we don't write unbaffled trailers, which is a sub-name for food grade. And why you can't have it is because there's too many surfaces to clean. And now with there's a new law that came out, we're going to look at it. In fact, Scott's going to deal in it. Scott Light's going to talk about it in the cargo section of the annual conference, the food grade transportation law, which even makes it more important because now the trucker has to tell the shipper how they've cleaned their trailers and what they hauled in it before to make sure it's clean because of the new food, the quality of the food. So that's the kind of stuff you need to know as we get through here. Now, J.J. Keller, our Transport Topics, you got to get a subscription to that magazine either online or there, because there's something in it every week that has something to do with insurance. The reason it's something to do with insurance is something that the government, what the government's doing that affects the insured. When I say insurance, it reports studies and that kind of stuff. J.J. Keller, they're the source of information, and they're going to be at the annual conference too, but they're the source of information about if you're loss prevention. One, this is the first place I start. If your insurer doesn't know about hiring a driver, about drug testing, you need to send them to J.J. Keller because they have all that data. I had a risk that came to me the other day. A friend of mine, I've been his predecessor, who he used to be an employer of. I handled their insurance for 25 years. They were self-insured on work comp. We have gone away from each other. He just started a concrete ready-mix company. He had 8 concrete ready-mix trucks. He moved from that employer to now his own company. I asked him, who does your drug testing? What drug testing? What's the apps? I said, you got a far greater opportunity to be shut down by the government than worry about insurance. So I hooked him with J.J. Keller, who provided all that stuff for him. So he got the applications, he's got what he needs, he's got the drug test. You follow what I'm saying? So they're a good source. They would be there one to complement the loss prevention people because they have all the data to do it right. The hiring, drivers, what's got to be an accident report, plus even the update of CSA and things like that. Their products, some of them are free. Some stuff they try to sell you that I wouldn't buy. So be cautious what you buy. I don't need their $400 manual every year. You follow what I'm saying? So but they're a good source. Here, American Transportation Research Institute, that stuff is free, folks. I'm going to quote them a lot in the next sections. You need that. They do reports. Their own, both Transport Topics and American Transport Research Institution are both affiliated with or owned a part of by the American Trucking Association. So they're all the 3 of them together. So Transport Topics will tell you studies by the American Transportation Research. Dan Murray, who's their vice president out in Annapolis, speaks at our annual conference each year with those updated studies. They've got hours of service studies. They tell you how much the vehicle costs. They even tell you where the crashes are, how much congestions there are, where the parking spaces are, and all that. They talk about that stuff. Trucker Info, that's a daily blog that tells you what's current being happened. Some of the stuff I read because I got tired of listening to what Congress is proposing, because they propose something different every week. I finally gave up and only report once they passed the law, because I get all excited about what they put in committee, and then all of a sudden it didn't come out of the committee, meaning we're going to let less than 21-year-old drivers interstate. We've talked about that for months. Then all of a sudden the law came out and it wasn't a part of the law. So I get worn out. I want to read it intellectually, but you can't do that. The Central Analysis Bureau, they're the ones your carrier has, but they have a source that's free, and that's the bits and pieces that Jean Gardner writes every month. The one thing that she regurgitates a lot of stuff that J.J. Keller says, that Transport Topics says, that I say on my blogs, but the one thing that she does add is court cases, recent court cases. I just wrote a blog the other day from uninsured motorists. Later I'm going to tell you that I don't want to offer uninsured motorists on commercial risk. But she just wrote a court case in Ohio that showed how my statement is correct, meaning how it pays out, and where it was not required to have uninsured motorists, that the limit's done properly. So I was able to tell you the things I've been saying, and actually with her help sign a court case that spelled out exactly what I've been saying here, in case you don't believe me. So she gives a lot of stuff, MCS 90, court cases and cargo cases. This carrier software, Juan, that's the one that you can go, and that's to where you have the $1
Right.
a month part of it. Good source there. But you can actually come for a smaller motor carrier, and what they'll give you is a profile. You can come to that motor carrier and say, motor carrier, here are the vehicles that are causing you problems. They'll isolate it, and if you've got the insurance PIN number, they'll even tell you the driver's name of which ones are getting the hours of service violations, which ones are not maintaining the vehicles, which ones are speedy. And most of the time, you're going to find that 10 or 15% of the trucks are the ones with the problems. Not everybody. So you can go to your motor carrier, and that you can arm going in. He'll run that report, and then you can hook into him, and then he'll keep that report coming as you do improvements. And for the $1, you get, you just give the DOT numbers, you get the emails directly. They're also, what their core business has always been is leads. And that's more costly here, where you can get anybody with a DOT number in your territory and send you leads. But he's able to refine it, Jared, on the leads I want to look at. Less than 5 power units with an alert or close to an alert, written with this insurance carrier that I know is too high. You know, we all know new ventures are hard to write. So he'll give you leads that have been with this insurance company, have been in business less than 2 years, been in business 2 years only with this insurance company, because now they're not new ventures anymore, and we know that old insurance company is overpricing it, so now that's a potential lead, right? Because now we're moving to not a new venture anymore. You follow what I'm saying? So, but those are different products. But you know, it's a no-brainer, Brad, for the $1 a month, in my opinion. I mean, $12 a year to invest that in that product. So those are the sources that I would suggest to help you insure.